There is a meter on the wall of your home that counts every kilowatt hour you use. On July 10th this year, the meters of China added up to 1.518 billion kilowatts, all drawing power at the same moment. No country's grid had ever carried more. Factories, data centers, electric cars, and millions of air conditioners all pulling together. And yet, in the middle of exactly this kind of summer, something keeps happening on China's power markets that sounds impossible. For a few hours around midday, in some provinces, the wholesale price of electricity sinks towards zero. Sometimes it falls below zero, and the companies generating power briefly pay other people to take it. This is the story of how the country, using more electricity than any other, made its summer power almost too cheap to meter. And why your own bill does not work that way, almost is the important word. First, one piece of plumbing you never see. Your home pays a retail price, a regulated rate printed on the bill. But behind that bill, there is a wholesale market where power plants sell electricity to the grid in blocks, hour by hour, sometimes in even smaller slices. That wholesale price moves like any auction. Plenty of supply and little demand, it sinks. Scarce supply and huge demand, it spikes. In most of the world, a brutal heat wave means wholesale prices explode upward. In China, in the middle of the day, the opposite keeps happening. To see why, you need to visit one province on the east coast. Shandong sits on the sea between Beijing and Shanghai, and it is home to around 100 million people. At the end of 2020, it had 23 gigawatts of solar panels. By June of 2025, it had more than 85. As of that date, only 4 entire countries owned more solar than this one province: the United States, India, Germany, and Japan. Then came the May Day holiday of 2023. Factories closed for the break, so demand dropped hard. The sun stayed out, so solar kept flooding in. And on the 1st of May, the spot price on Shandong's power exchange slid below zero and stayed there for 22 consecutive hours, bottoming out around minus 85 yuan per megawatt hour. Notice the word minus. For nearly a full day, selling electricity into that market cost the seller money. If numbers like that make you lean in, take a second and subscribe. This channel exists to trace the ordinary objects in your home back to machines the size of countries. Because a grid that pays people to take power is telling you something deeper, and it is worth understanding, since it is coming to more grids than China's. Coal and nuclear plants hate switching off. Shutting down and restarting can cost a plant more than simply riding out a few unprofitable hours. Wind and solar farms cost almost nothing to run once they are built. So when midday sunshine pours in and nobody needs it, producers would rather pay a small penalty than power down. A negative price is not charity, it is machines bidding to stay alive. And in Shandong, it stopped being a curiosity almost immediately. Negative pricing persisted for about 1,000 hours in 2023, then about 1,000 hours again in 2024. That is roughly 1 hour out of every 9 on the calendar in which wholesale electricity in one of the world's great industrial provinces was worth less than nothing. Here's the part almost nobody outside China has fully absorbed. In 2024 alone, China installed 277 gigawatts of utility-scale solar. The United States, across its entire history up to the end of that year, had installed 121. 1 year of building in China more than doubled the entire American fleet. Then 2025 topped it. More than 430 gigawatts of new wind and solar went up in a single year, a record up 22% from the year before. By the end of 2025, wind and solar together reached 1.84 billion kilowatts of capacity. That is 47.3% of everything connected to the Chinese grid. And for the first time in the country's history, it edged past thermal power, the coal and gas fleet that built modern China. So, in the summer of 2025, the strange midday economics stopped being a Shandong quirk and spread across the map. In Guangdong, the manufacturing heartland in the south, spot prices in July repeatedly fell below zero point 0.3 yuan per kilowatt hour, which is roughly 4 US cents. On July 21st, they touched a monthly low below 0.24 yuan. Next door, Guangxi slid under 0.18 yuan, an all-time low for that region. Shandong and Zhejiang went outright negative again. All of this while the heat was punishing and air conditioners were running flat out. Three forces were stacking. Almost 200 gigawatts of new solar had connected in just the first 5 months of the year. Industrial electricity use was growing by only about 2.4%. And on June 1st, a nationwide reform pushed renewable plants to sell at market prices instead of guaranteed ones. Supply surged, demand strolled, and the price of a sunny afternoon collapsed. Now, for the part your own bill already suspects, none of this means electricity in China became free. It did not, and it is important to say that plainly. Chinese households do not buy power on the spot market. They pay a regulated retail rate, and that rate barely moves. At the end of 2025, the average household price was about 0.53 yuan per kilowatt hour, around 8 US cents. That is less than half the world average, and it is one of the quiet advantages of daily life in China, but it is not zero and it is not close. If you are still here, you are exactly who this channel is built for, so consider subscribing. There is a lot more of the modern world left to take apart. Even during that famous negative stretch in Shandong, only around 5 or 6% of the province's electricity actually traded at spot prices. Most of it flowed through long-term contracts, and generators collected separate payments for standing ready. The negative number is a signal deep inside the machine, not a gift on anyone's bill. But what it signals is still remarkable. At certain hours in certain provinces, the next unit of electricity is now worth less than the paperwork it would take to charge for it. There is an old promise buried inside that idea. In 1954, Lewis Strauss, the chairman of America's Atomic Energy Commission, told a room of science writers that their children would enjoy electricity too cheap to meter. He meant the atom, and the atom never delivered. 70 years later, the nearest thing on Earth to his promise is a July afternoon in eastern China, delivered not by one miraculous machine, but by a country tiled with glass panels. And it turns out that too cheap carries its own price tag. Solar developers who had counted on guaranteed rates watched their margins evaporate. And in June of 2025, new installations fell nearly 40% from a year earlier. Shandong, for its part, doubled its battery storage to 9.6 gigawatts in 2 years and plans to double it again, soaking up the worthless noon flood to sell back into the expensive evening. Cheap power, it turns out, is not a finish line. It is a brand new engineering problem. Which brings us back to the meter on your wall. It only counts how much you use. It has no idea when. For a century, that was fine because a kilowatt hour cost roughly the same at noon as it did at midnight. China's summer is the first full-size glimpse of a world where that stops being true. Power that is nearly worthless while the sun is high, and precious again the moment it sets. A grid where the real question is no longer how much electricity costs, but when you ask. On July 10th, as China carried the heaviest electrical load in human history, the midday sun was quietly doing a share of the work that no engineer would have believed 20 years ago. The meter kept ticking, it always will. But somewhere between the panel, the battery, and the bill, the thing it is counting has changed.